Hi everyone, welcome back to Heartland Mamas.
I'm Heidi Henry.
And I'm Murri Briel.
And we're talking to you from the edge of the Great Red Divide. And today, Murri, we have a very serious topic to cover.
We are going to be talking about trafficking, human trafficking, which involves labor, forced sexual servitude, as well as forced marriage,
Yes.
underage marriage. So we wanted to let you know ahead of time, if you are sensitive, we will be talking about statistics, the law, as well as stories. So there may be some explicit stories that may upset you. So we wanted you to be aware.
Right. And this is something that I've been aware of since 1992. I met or followed online the story of Esther Holliday, who has the Love Outreach Center that was located at one point in Wedren, Illinois. And Love Outreach helps provide resources and shelter for women that have been trafficked. And Pastor Holliday unfortunately lost her facility to a fire, but she still does action and outreach throughout the community. Most recently, I was in a march through the city of Morris, Illinois, last year to support.
I remember that.
awareness.
I remember. Yeah, I wasn't able to make it, but
And people think that, Morris, Illinois, why would that be a hub for human trafficking? Well, it's because of all of the traffic in and out. Whenever you have a high traffic area, and I'm not saying truck drivers are the cause at all. That's a misnomer. The thing is that there's a lot of vehicles in and out all the time.
because Route 80 is a major thoroughfare. It's
Right.
the only way
It
to
goes
get
from New Jersey to California.
right. So it's a huge swath. It's heavily traveled. It's a major roadway through the country. That's why there's a significant amount of drugs that come through there. Meth is very prevalent. Heroin is very prevalent on the corridor. They call it the 80 corridor.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere. But those towns located along the 80 corridor are particularly vulnerable.
And part of the reason for that is, and they're chosen that way, is these smaller towns don't have the resources or police forces strong enough to really tackle this epidemic.
So we'd like to start off by talking about some basic numbers here. So in the last numbers that were conducted, which was 2018, 40.3 million people globally are enslaved in some form of
Right.
trafficking.
Right.
So that is a ridiculous amount. And then when we break that down, 24.9 million are in forced labor, which also includes sexual labor.
Yes.
And this really kind of just this was shocking to me that 15.4 million people are into forced marriages. So we're not just talking, and these are not, arranged and agreed to marriages, but these are forced for sale brides, husbands.
Well, and we think that this problem affects everybody, but it affects women exponentially. And anywhere in the world, Murri, where women are not safe, and the United States is ranked as not a safe country for women any longer.
No, it's not. Or for LGBTQ, and that is where a large percentage of the boys that end up enslaved come from, because of the isolation and the loneliness feeling of going through that experience.
Yeah.
And then they get pulled into these types of situations.
It's the only place where a lot of times they're drawn in, not just
by a kindness.
by
Their parents
kindness.
have thrown them out. Their friends have abandoned them.
They're
They
searching
don't know
for
what to
love
do.
and
It's the same
guidance.
thing for a lot of runaways in
yeah.
general.
And runaways are a
Particularly vulnerable portion
yes.
of this population.
And they are a small portion of trafficking, or it used to be most of the trafficking were runaways, were young men and women with drug issues or home issues, so that they were out on the streets and then brought in through a kindness and into the trafficking situation. But now we know that we have an epidemic of trafficking coming in from other countries. And Murri and I were discussing we talk so much about the Northern Triangle, which is Nicaragua, Honduras, and Guatemala. But a lot of trafficking comes in from Asia and the former Russian USSR bloc nations.
Particularly the Ukraine.
Ukraine, yeah.
Yeah.
Because not in all countries, prostitution a bad thing. It's not illegal. And in some cases, a trip to the United States, even as a concubine, even as a sex worker, is considered a good thing. And
And one of the things that the Polaris Project talks about is they talk about how oftentimes women will leave their home areas in the Ukraine, particularly in Eastern Europe, and they will know that they're going into sexual servitude.
yes.
They call it working,
Yeah.
not sexual slavery,
Right.
and they are happy to go. And then when they come back, they buy a house and they're considered like very successful.
Right.
So it's on multiple levels that we need to address this issue. It's not just the runaway. It's not just the girl being sold by her parents because they can't afford to feed her, or the boy kidnapped on the street.
Right.
The problems go deeply to socioeconomic situations.
Well,
The more poverty there is, the less opportunity there is, the higher the rates of human trafficking become.
and as poverty has grown globally, trafficking has increased globally. When people have no other options, this may be the only option they have. In certain parts of the world, in North Korea, in Asia, children can be sold into trafficking for as low
They
as
can be sold here too.
they can be sold here too, but for as low as $48, which there would be an enormous amount of money. But if you can't afford to feed your child, if the child has become a burden to you, if you're trying to get it 3 squares a day and some education, it seems like a good plan. They don't know, or they're hoping for the best, and really, and sometimes they're being
The
told
prime
the story.
example is Natalia. Natalia was from a Ghana village.
And Ghana,
her family,
Ghana's in Africa.
her town was so poor they didn't even have a school. So
Right.
she had an opportunity. Her family, a guy from New Jersey, offered her the chance to go to the United States. She would nanny for them. They would feed her, clothe her, educate her. She'd be able to go to school. And she was so excited about it. So her family was like, yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as she got there, they took away her papers. She started working 18-hour days, cooking and cleaning for the parents and their 3 children. They didn't enroll her in school. They didn't give her any money. They didn't give her a room. She
No.
slept on a blanket in the
No.
basement.
Yeah.
She was, they took all of her papers, and eventually a neighbor realized that something wasn't right. They built kind of a friendship over the fence type, and she helped her get away. And then
It happens all the time. There was a case also in New York where a woman came over from India, and she was sold as a bride, and her mother-in-law put her to work in a similar situation, caring for the household. I believe her name was Stika, and she was to care for the household, to care for the other children. She did not have marital relations with the son. He didn't even live there, but her mother-in-law put her to work, cooking and cleaning and caring for other children, and she was also able to escape from by forming a relationship with someone else, so that helped her get out. But so many times the isolation is overwhelming, and oftentimes there is a language barrier, there is a communication barrier, there is no access to having a phone, or to mailing a letter, or
there isn't,
sending a
and they don't
postcard.
have their own they have nothing.
No
That's
internet.
the way to be able
Nothing.
to keep them isolated.
Right. Isolation is key to keeping them behaving.
Another example where we talk before we go more into the exploitations of women and men in the sex trade. There's this large lawsuit that has not been come to yet. The woman who declared that the hotel chains were enslaving people.
Right.
And this gentleman who was also a victim of that in a hotel chain.
Right.
He had an opportunity. He was from Honduras, and he had an opportunity to come over and work in an American hotel. He'd be provided room and board
Yep.
and a small salary. And it is a large chain hotel. It is not disclosed because that portion is under sealed indictment.
Right.
But it is several of these are indicted in this, and so there's certain industries that it lends itself to very, very well. Hospitality, magazine sales. There's kids that come to your door that say they're paying their way through college. A large percentage of them are actually forced into labor. If they don't meet their quotas, they're not paid anything.
They're picked up from some of the poorest regions in the United States: Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, northern Florida, Texas, Arkansas. They're loaded into a van, 15 kids in a van, a cooler of food that they have to survive on, very few rest stops, and in order to eat that night, they have to sell a percentage of magazines. And you've seen them. They've come to your door. They've come to my door. And I feel terrible because they're dirty, they're bedraggled, they look hungry, they don't have a cell phone to call home. They have no way to contact their parents to let them know.
And even if they did, a lot of them are, one magazine company in particular had this entire crew of 8 boys terrified that they would harm them because the managers boast about their criminal records and all the violence they've done, and the boys were terrified. It was a abuser situation. So not only, they didn't have a cell phone, they could have gotten a cell phone, right? You think, well, why wouldn't you go to a door and somebody's being really nice to you, say, help me? Because they're terrified for themselves and for their
family back home.
For their family back home, absolutely.
Well, and we had an infamous sex trafficking operation in Florida where Robert Kraft took part in a sexual act in a massage parlor. Owner of the New England Patriots. You'd think he wouldn't need to go to a strip mall and see a young person. And it turns out that the people who are brought in, mostly from Asia, into these spas, believe that their families back home in China, Korea, Bangladesh, wherever it is, are going to be harmed if they don't do these things. Sometimes if they have young children, they keep those young children back in their home country, and those children are threatened, or at least the sex trafficked worker or the labor trafficked worker is threatened with bodily, physical harm, grievous harm to their child, to their parents, to their grandparents, to their brothers and sisters, and they will do anything to protect them. The mind games, the mental gymnastics that these people have to go, sleep deprivation, food deprivation, to get them to behave and to work is amazing. It's stunning. And in that case, the owner of those spas, multitudes of spas, would move these clients frequently throughout the state of Florida. They came in either on a work visa or vacation visa and never returned.
And one of the frustrating parts about this is we don't know who the actual owners are.
Well, we do, because she's got access to Mar-a-Lago. She's
but
a donor.
She's who's listed as the register. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean where her funding came from.
Right.
Where did her money come from?
Right.
Where did she get the business to start up? Where did her capital come from? None of that needs to be disclosed. None of her capital could have been put in at all. It very well could have come, which it came from a successful or at least a wealthy business person for the startup capital for her beginning massage parlors. And yet there is no federal law that requires when someone registers a business, depending on the local and state jurisdiction, it can be the business owner. The business owner himself must register the business. It can be an agent, someone acting on behalf. It could be shell companies.
Shell companies are the
that's shell companies but they're not even half of the agents and the DBAs and it's mind-boggling. So there is absolutely no accountability for who really owns these places. So Heidi was talking about massage parlors. Most of any criminal information that comes pretty much from raids, where they'll raid these parlors, and that's great. You get the girls, you get some guys, you get a couple of managers, but you're not getting the owners, you're not getting the money, you're not getting the source of the trafficking.
Because less than 30% keep any type of records whatsoever, and most of them operate on a cash-only basis. So there's no way to track who's used the services, and there's
So
nowhere
we
to
have
track
to know who owns each individual facility.
But Murri, right now we don't have the will in the federal government, and we've never had since the law we passed in 2000.
That keeps getting reaffirmed,
Right.
but
There's no accountability, and there's no will in Washington to change it. None whatsoever. So you have to wonder why, when we could go out of our way to protect people, why don't we do anything?
because it's economy. It comes down to basic economy. So for $5,000, I can get a cook, cleaner, chef, nanny, forced labor that I barely have to feed, and I have a year's worth of housekeeping. Even if I just did housekeeping, right?
Yeah.
You know? A housekeeper would come to do my house would be 150 maybe bucks, maybe $100 every other week. You know, what's that come out to be, the math wise?
If you came once a week, it'd be $5,200 a year.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can have somebody come once a week, or I can have a human come because we
and
value
be there every day.
humanly, right, and at my beck and call.
Yeah.
Because we value human life so little. And it comes down to economy. It's not just the economy being people in Honduras and people in America and people in Russia or the former Soviet Union that are disparate and they have no economic opportunities. Yes, that's a part of it. But a bigger part of it are the corporations that prey on this, like the hotel chains, like the
Golf course. Well, we know because it's in the news right now that we
golf course. What do you mean?
Well, they've asked our president if they can stay. So they got there somehow. Not, I didn't invite them over to work in my golf course, did I? Somebody had to. Anyway, so I digress. However, anytime you go someplace and get your eyebrows done, I got mine done today. Anytime you get your feet rubbed, anytime you get a massage, anytime the little fish chew off the dead skin off your feet, I've never had that done. Anytime you go to a restaurant and you see a busboy, a sous chef, anytime you go and see people laboring hard, the opportunity for sex, or not, but for human trafficking is there. Not every spot is bad, but Murri, we were sitting here and I pulled up the little map of the United States.
Okay, whoa. All right, I had no idea this existed. Apparently, there's a site called RubHub.
Yeah.
We're not spelling it out. We're not giving you the details on it. You can figure it out, but apparently that's a whole listing of massage parlors that give happy endings, and it's rural, urban, it's everywhere, and I had no idea that even existed.
Three clicks to
Three
get there.
clicks.
The fourth click got me to a place where I never wanted to be. And I'm telling you, it's disturbing because these are not always people who want to be there. I don't find any romance in that at all. But these are people who are really suffering. And the fact that our federal government, our state is trying to address the problem right now, but the federal government has absolutely no compunction to do anything whatsoever, and yet they could.
Well, there is a law that is about a 68% chance of passing that talks about, a good idea is to not, when we travel overseas or abroad, to stay with companies that adhere to a 6 standard.
Yeah.
Wow, that just seems to make common sense, but apparently we need a law for that.
Well, we know that a lot of countries you travel to, I was just talking to somebody who was in Bangladesh on vacation and absolutely knew that the people working in their hotel chain were not there because they wanted to be there. They were purchased to work there. So, and they were purchased out of Africa to work there. And they found it horrifying, but the Bangladesh government has zero interest in doing anything about it. Absolutely zero. Just kind of like our government right now. And the thing is until we step up and we contact our legislative leaders and we demand change, nothing will ever change. We have to expect change. We have to want change. And the thing is we need to address why this happens. Why would Robert Kraft go into a strip mall in Florida to get a hand job? I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it, Murri, because that's what happened. And apparently there's videotape. You own the New England Patriots.
Right.
And some woman tried to tell me, well, his wife died. Poor man. No, that doesn't excuse that kind of loutish behavior. It doesn't excuse it. I'm sorry your wife died, but it doesn't get you give you carte blanche to be lewd and crude and
Absolutely not.
the devil himself, because these are people who aren't there willingly. And as the police chief said there, it's the tip of the iceberg. Now, a lot of money has flowed in to kind of cover this all up, and the story has kind of died. And that's makes
The
me so
stories
sad.
typically die quite often. We
Yeah.
knew about Jeffrey Epstein 10 years ago, and it popped up again, and when Trump was running, and there were questions, and
Yep.
there was comments when Hillary was running about him that they knew. So we knew this was a part, and we chose to turn a blind eye. No one investigated it
okay.
further. Well, yeah, but what I'm saying, though, is
Yeah.
it becomes a blip on the radar, and it goes away.
The thing is that anybody who ever watched Howard Stern or ever listened to Howard Stern, and I have, I'm sure you've heard him,
Yeah.
knows that our president would go on there and talk about his trysts with barely illegal, or underage girls openly. We have, and
Yeah, I know.
and we decided that that's okay. Let's elect him. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? It's not all of us, it's some of us.
And then it goes beyond, we talk about young women, young men, but children are incredible victims. In the United States, annually, between 100 and 300,000, 100 to 300,000 children
300,000 children
are prostituted. And by prostituted, that does not include pornography or video exploitation. That is strictly sexual acts.
sometimes sold by parents, sometimes sold by babysitters, sometimes sold by relatives.
And that doesn't count Louisiana. I'm looking at you, the 4,000 underage marriages that you have a year. And by underage, we're not talking, 16, 17. We're
12.
talking 12.
12-year-olds.
That
12-year-olds.
falls into the same category. Hey, I can buy a child bride.
I can buy it, and they're sold. And they're okay with it. You should be outraged. You should say, no, that absolutely should never happen. A 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old should never be sold as a child bride, period. And the thing about this, Murri, that really pisses me off is this goes one way. It doesn't go back the other way. This isn't women purchasing little boys. This isn't women.
It isn't women purchasing little boys. It's men.
It's always 40-year-old men and a 12-year-old girl. It always
for the marriages.
is. For the marriages.
For the sex slaves, it's the 40-year-old man and the 12-year-old boy.
It's not women buying these underage children or marrying them. Yes, once in a while you hear about
not.
Mary Kay Letourneau and her student. Once or twice.
We need to address these issues, and we're getting close on our time here, but
I know.
we want to say before we go that just so that everyone understands the three types we need to watch out for and be careful of, and are labor, sexual, and forced marriage, and all of those affect us. They affect. It's a global epidemic. We'll talk more about, we've talked about some of the socioeconomic factors and some of the reasons why it happens. Mm-hmm. Next time, we're going to talk more about the policies that don't exist, the policies that we want to see exist, best practices, what we can do, how we can be involved, where we can get help. But if anyone wants to share the information, if you Google human trafficking, the first thing that pops up is a human trafficking hotline.
Yes.
And
Well,
here's the number. We will put it as well.
okay, so if you or somebody you know is being trafficked, or if you suspect somebody's being trafficked, call 1-888-373-7888. You can text help or text info to 23733, humantraffickinghotline.org. Those are things that we're going to put on our Facebook page and on Twitter.
Website. And
Yeah, everywhere, because being a proactive person can save someone's life. Most of these people that are trafficked, men and women that are trafficked, don't live. That's one thing we never got to today, is the fact that a lot of them, especially if they are from other countries and brought in, either overstaying a visa, nobody's looking for them, they just disappear. Nobody knows what happens to them.
and don't even get us started on the connection between all the missing children and the missing women through the detention system. That'll be addressed as well.
Oh my gosh, the issue on the border, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of children, especially girls, that are missing. There is so many children that are just missing from these detention centers.
And as Forbes from late last year says, follow the money, which
Follow
is
the
what
money.
we'll be doing on our next
So,
cast.
I'm Heidi Henry.
And I'm Murri Briel. Thank you for tuning in. Please, if you like what we have to say, share us, like us. We're available everywhere, Heartland Mamas. And if you really like us, we would love it if you would donate. That would be fantastic.
And the other thing I'd recommend that you do is look up Pastor Esther Holiday and the Love Outreach Center. They are a local group that does amazing work. Pastor Holiday was trafficked as a child and survived human trafficking.
And we'll make sure we put that information up.
Yeah.
We're also going to put up a link to where you can find places to help organizations that help victims of human trafficking.
So thank you so much for tuning in. We really
And we'll
appreciate
talk to you again soon.
Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.